This is the Upgrade Yourself podcast, where you'll learn actionable steps to enhance all areas of your life and design a life that you love. Here are your hosts, Chris and Diana Bryant.
Hello and welcome to episode 4, Simple Steps to Financial Freedom. I'm Diana.
And I'm Chris. And we're really excited to go over this episode with you. This is actually a question from a listener, viewer, Jennifer from Seattle. Thank you for the question. She wanted to know about our personal finances, how we go about making budgets, looking at our cash flows, holding ourselves accountable to those budgets. And I feel this is a very timely episode with what's going on in the world right now, where layoffs and unemployment is really it's skyrocketing right now. Everyone's looking really carefully at their finances, their budgets. Ways to save and really make your dollar go further than it ever has. Now, we've been married for 15 years, and we've figured out what works, what doesn't. By we, I basically mean Diana. She's the brains behind it, and I go along with it because they're all really good ideas. When we first got married, that was not really the case, so she took over the finances, and we've been in very, very good shape since then. Let's jump right into the meat and potatoes of the episode with step 1.
Absolutely. I'm very excited about these steps. And I can tell you guys that the important thing, like any other step, is to take action. If you guys listen to this and start taking action right away, you're going to start seeing differences in your finances as well. So step number 1 is to know your money well. It's very important that you understand where your money is going. First of all, understand where your money is coming from, how much money you have, and then know where you're allocating that money. You have to understand that you have the control over every single money that comes in, every single penny that you have. You tell the penny where to go. And that's the principle that we realized with Chris very early in our relationship, that we have dominion per se over our money and we tell it where to go. So it's important that you start by analyzing every single one of your expenses. And the best way to do this is 2 ways. One, either journaling, so you can start writing down every single day where your money is going, every single trip to Starbucks, anything you buy, everything you're going to put it down on that journal. Or the other way is to go back 1 month or 2 months, depending on how you think is best for you, and analyze all your expenses, where your money has been going for the past 2 months.
Yeah, it's so important to do that because you may not realize it, but when you do that 1 or 2 months looking back of research, you may go, oh my God, we spent $726 on, restaurants and fast food and going out to grab pizza. And I mean, you don't realize it at the time. It's like, $30 here, $45 here. But when it adds up, it really, really adds up. It's like a car payment for just extra food. So you realize, okay, maybe we can cut back on that a little bit. But it's very, very important to do this step. It's a little bit of research, a little bit of work up front, but it will pay dividends. Absolutely.
And that's why it's important, as we mentioned before, to be conscious every day where your money is going, right? And make a list of everything, like separate it. And we're actually going to create a spreadsheet with Chris for you guys that will guide you on how to do this, how to get this, how to apply this video, this podcast on your day-to-day. So that spreadsheet is going to have where to allocate that list and start thinking about where every single time you swipe your credit card, every single time you send a check, where the money is going. And as I mentioned before, that's something we did with Chris very early in our relationship. And up to today, we know exactly how many times we swipe our credit card for a Starbucks or whatever it is, because we have already previously been on agreement where we're going to be spending our money.
That brings us into step 2, which after you've made that list, you need to evaluate and eliminate expenses, certain strategic expenses. So you need to have your essentials like rent or mortgage, food, like grocery shopping, electricity, internet, depending on what you're doing, of course. In this day and age, pretty much internet is like a need to have. And then the nice to haves, which is going out to restaurants, fast food, going out to the movies, going out to the theater or whatever it is, all of your subscriptions like Hulu and Netflix and your, crazy cable packages, and start looking at what can I cut back on? This is so important because, again, these things really add up very quickly. So, okay, let's only eat out 1 time a week instead of 3 or 4 times a week. And we're going to say, one thing that'll help motivate you is oh wow, look how much money we're going to save. If we cut back by 75% on going out to eat, we're going to save X amount of hundreds of dollars every single month times 12. How much annually are we saving? And it really is motivating.
Right.
Those little purchases feel good until it comes time to pay your credit card and look at your bank statement, and then you develop more white hairs. So it's very important to cut these things back. Additionally, you can look at saving money on the essentials. Like, okay, listen, we've already cut back on all these things. The things that we must pay, is there a way to lower these bills? If you have a mortgage, okay, interest rates, they're looking pretty good. We haven't refinanced in 10 years or whatever it is. There's much lower interest rates. We can lower our monthly payments by X amount of dollars a month if we refinance, or take a look at your cell phone provider. Okay, hey, this other company is offering the same plan for less, or maybe I don't need as much data, so maybe I can just lower my plan, and it's going to save money. Even if you slice $10 here, $20 there, $14 here, with all your bills, that's going to add up, and it really adds up quickly.
And that's why it is important to have that list, right? Because that list will help you identify very quickly what it is that is an essential in your life and what it is something that you can actually eliminate from that list. So another thing that you can do is run a budget. And the best way to do it is at the end of the week, at the end of the month, whenever it is that you run your budget, see if the income, the money that is coming in, is higher than your expenses. Because if it's the opposite, if it's the other way around, that means that you are in trouble. And that means that you definitely need to, in an obligated way, to start cutting expenses, because your income should always be higher than your expenses. So when you create that list, and I was going to tell a quick story that we discovered with Chris years ago when we were going through these budget things. We were subscribed to so many magazines and things that we did not need. We didn't even have the time to read those magazines or subscribe to applications that we didn't even use, that we have to eliminate all those things. But it was just coming out of our bank account without us realizing.
It was like second nature. We had it for so long, we didn't even think about it.
Exactly. So those kind of things, when you create that list, you're going to discover so many things that you're going to be like, wow. And then at the end of the year, you're going to realize how much money you can save just by cutting those things in your life. And as I was mentioning before, when you run those budgets, when you compare how much money at the end of the month you're spending versus the income that is coming in, that's going to be definitely a revelation right there to see where you're allocating your money.
And always make sure you're not spending money that you don't have. A lot of people get into that, like, oh, hey, I'll just use my credit card, I'll charge it. Yeah, well, when the money comes in, we don't spend any money that we don't have.
Exactly.
I mean, one of the things that we did is we don't carry debt aside from the mortgage of the house, which is, if you have a mortgage, you got a mortgage, but we haven't made a car payment in years.
Yeah, we really focus on and made it a goal to pay it off as quick as possible because we don't like having debts. And that's the kind of life that you can actually live. And we're going to be talking in the next point, which we will transition in a moment, about how to allocate your money. But it's all about setting goals, even when it comes to financial goals, right? You said, and that's a goal that we have set up with Chris to see how we can pay off the house quickly, because it is the goal is not to have debt, and the goal is to achieve financial freedom, whatever that means to you. So another advice that we can give you, and it's something that we do with Chris, is we pay bills every 2 weeks, so 2 times a month. And the reason why we do this is because it helps us control the money that is coming in and is going out even easier, because if you wait to do it just once a month, it could accumulate a lot of expenses and receipts that now you have to check. But if you do it bi-weekly, you're paying in advance, you're omitting paying late fees, and you're making sure you're keeping track and control of your expenses.
It also breaks it down a little bit. If you can do 30 days worth of expenses and double checking credit card statements and paying all the bills, it's going to take longer than if you do it every 2 weeks. And then, getting in front of those payments and making sure that you pay it well in advance, you sleep better at night too.
Absolutely, yeah. And that leads us to step number 3, which is allocate your money. And we have been following with Chris this rule for years, and it's the 80-20 rule. But for us, because we're entrepreneurs, I like calling it the 50-30-10-10 rule.
makes sense. Bear with us.
So what we do is we allocate 50% of our money, whatever it is that we make at the end of, we were talking about this two lists, right? Whatever it is that comes in, the income that you actually have, and then your expenses. So right now what we're talking is about the income. That's the money we're going to allocate, right? So 50% of that money that comes in is going to go towards essentials, towards things that we need to pay on a monthly basis, and also includes our recreation, because we have a percentage within that 50%, we actually allocate 5% for recreation or vacation or whatever it is we play with that money. And then we have 30% because once again, we're entrepreneurs, we have to set aside whatever money we make for taxes. So we like doing it ahead of time. So whenever it's time to pay for taxes, we're not running like crazy trying to collect money to pay taxes and then end up paying late fees. So what we like doing is right away, every single time we get a check or something, we apply this rule to it. And then we use 10% for tithing. And this 10% can be towards, you can be donating to charities, or you can be helping other people. Like we really believe and love, and is one of our values as a couple, to help others. So that 10% we allocated thinking that whatever blessing we're getting, we need to share that blessing, right? So we like putting that money aside, and then we also have the 10% for savings. And whatever money comes in, we immediately take that 10% and put it towards savings, thinking about the future, right? So all these kind of things is what we implement, this formula per se, on every single money that comes in. Now, it's probably a little bit more easy for somebody who gets the same amount every month. If you have a check that comes every single month, that's when I said you guys can apply the 80-20 rule, because the taxes usually is taken ahead of time. So you can count with that 80% that is coming in, allocate 10% to help others or tithing, and 10% for saving.
Yeah, so basically, as far as we're concerned, half of what we get is for our expenses, and the other half isn't ours. Don't touch it.
Right.
It's for giving away, it's for saving, it's for hanging on for tax day,
right.
To pay that.
And you can allocate this rule however works for you, right? So for example, the 10% that is for saving. Chris and I, we don't have kids, but if we have kids, we probably will have allocated 5% for savings for us and 5% for our children, right? Whether it's college or whatever it is. So you can play with that percentage however work best for you. It could be investing, however it is that you want to allocate that 10%. That 50% that Chris and I have for expenses and entertainment, we allocate it however we think is the best for us. So in our case, as I said, it's usually 45% for our day-to-day, our living, and 5% for entertainment, right? So,
One thought on that too, with the savings. We're kind of like a low-risk household here. I don't want to throw like that money into like the stocks. High risk, high reward potentially, but we don't have that much of a stomach for those things. So we use a high yield savings account. So it's still not great, but considering the fact that it's zero risk and it's 100% liquid, allows us the flexibility to just toss the money into a high yield savings account, knowing that we can pull from there any moment. It's not like a certificate of deposit where, again, slightly higher return rate, but you can't touch it for the duration of the CD. That's a whole other topic, but you can look into CDs if you know for a fact you're not going to use the money for 3 months or 6 months or 12 months. But for us personally, high yield savings, it works a little bit better for us.
Right. And once you have that pool of money that you have saved up, then you can think about what you want to do with that money, right? Like, how is it that you're going to invest and you're going to make it grow? And, but as Chris said, maybe we can do another podcast about saving, how to save and what to do with your savings and things like that, give you some ideas on that. But for now, as we mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, we have created a spreadsheet that will have the formula there for you, and it will help you allocate according to whatever money it is that you make and the expenses that you guys have.
Okay, jump into step 4. How do we hold ourselves accountable? The first step, and this is very, very important, give yourself a strong why. And if you're married, talk to your spouse, make sure you're on the same page with that why. Why do we need our financing in good order? Why do we need to have a savings? Why do we want to, it seems kind of obvious, but why would I want to chip down my debt to get to zero? Come up with that very strong why. Maybe it's so that way we can save up to have 12 months backup emergency savings. That's our goal. We really want to have that in case something crazy happens like a global pandemic and you want to have a year worth of savings in your account. Why do you want to do this? And if it's something very important to you, you'll have that fire under you to get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. The why is what is going to definitely help you stay focused and move towards that goal that you have, because it's very easy to fall into temptation, especially when it comes to money, to buy everything that is on sale. And we think that things are never going to go back to sale, right? Those kind of things that we see out there are temptations for us. So, but when you have a strong why is it that, as Chris said, you're saving? Why is it that you're doing what you're doing? It's so much easier to say no to those temptations and to stick to what you guys have agreed to. And if you're single, that why is going to work wonders for you, because that why was going to help you definitely stick to your budget or whatever it is that you're setting yourself financially to.
And tell yourself that it's a non-negotiable thing. Don't say, you know what, let me spend a little bit on takeout this time. Or that's why in that 50%, like Donna was saying, we allocate a percentage of that 50% towards things like, hey, this is kind of free money for us to indulge ourselves every once in a while within reason, to go out, have a more lavish date night, because we're very simple. Usually a cup of coffee out somewhere at our local coffee shop suffices. But hey, let's go out for dinner and a movie. Let's go, and make a night out of it. It's certainly within the budget. Let's go ahead and do that. And by making it non-negotiable and telling yourself that, and this is especially critical if you are not married, if you're just handling your finances completely on your own, you have to develop a lot of willpower for yourself to make it non-negotiable. But try to have a little bit in there for you to play, because if you are totally cold turkey on any kind of enjoyment, it can be easy to lapse on this. So, hold yourself accountable, make it a non-negotiable.
Yeah, and it could be something as simple like right now that, everybody, especially if you're going through a layoff or things like that, you still can have fun, but think about what kind of free fun you can have at home. You know what I mean? And think about, today, and for example, now we're going through quarantine with Chris at the house. You have to be creative with what you have. We have a Starbucks at our house. We go to the movies at our house, and we just try to make it fun. And the same way when we're on a budget or where we're trying to save up for something specific, we try to see what other ways we can have fun or reward ourselves that it doesn't necessarily include, going out and spending money. So we can give you on the list, maybe we can include a list of ideas of what you guys can do that it will be fun on that downloadable that we're going to give you guys. We can include something like that, some ideas on what you can do with, that doesn't require spending money.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, we'll add it. Look for it in the downloadable. And that downloadable also is going to be in the show notes. If you're watching on YouTube, it'll be in the description below. So, and also, because we are going back to holding ourselves accountable, since we are going to be doing it bi-weekly, and you'll be doing it bi-weekly, right? You'll be able to give yourself a little tune-up every other week instead of waiting and realizing in a month, whoa, I really went out of budget on that. So since you're doing it bi-weekly, you can do more frequent kind of audits of yourself to make sure that you're there. And keep in mind, this isn't very easy, especially when you build up a habit. It will be easy, and then in months from now, when you look back and go, okay, I sacrificed a bit, but look where I am. I paid off my credit card debt down to zero, and I've got some savings in the bank. I'm building it up. I'm used to it. I don't have to have Starbucks every single day, and I'm reaping the rewards of it. So
yeah, and it's that doing it bi-weekly also helps you reset your goals, right? Like you can evaluate how you're doing financially. You can write down budget, as I mentioned before, where you compare your income versus your expenses. And when you do that in a bi-weekly basis, it's so much easier to see and check yourself how you're doing financially. So one thing that we love doing with Chris, like Chris was saying, we're very simple when it comes to entertainment and things like that. But there is one big pleasure that we love doing, and is actually, and we started doing it a couple of years ago, and we absolutely love it, and is to travel, and especially experiencing what it is to live in other countries. And we stayed there for a month, before we even do that, we make sure we have the money saved up. We make sure we find obviously the best deals and things like that. We do a lot of research. We just don't run to the first place that they offer something. We compare, we do research. And the good thing for us guys and for everybody is that there is a lot of competition out there. So when you compare one apartment versus another or things like that, you're going to see that, there is a good value for you out there. So when we do this, we always look for these three things: good location, good price, and good reviews. And we always try to do that and apply that rule to every single place we're looking into, whether it's a car rental, whether it's Airbnb, or whatever it is that we do. So always do the homework and always try to find the best deal for yourselves. And I think, as I mentioned before, we always have that budget set aside to make sure we include recreation in our life, because recreation is part of the areas of life and it's important that you have a balance. But if you are right now going through a tough spot where you cannot do that or afford to do things like that, there are other ways to include recreation into your life.
And traveling for a month, a year sounds crazy. We're self-employed. The whole point of Studio 12 Academy and what we're doing is to help you design your dream life. And for us, one of the big things is freedom of location, money, and time. And that means, okay, hey, November, it's usually a little bit slow for my business. Diana really can do hers from anywhere in the world. So let's design it in such a way that we can do that. Now, that doesn't mean like for 1 month a year, we're just basking in the sun and working on our tan, or in my case, a sunburn. What we're doing is we're living somewhere else for a month. We might have, weekends off, but Monday through Friday, for the most part, I'm working. I might give myself a day off, but for the most part, I'm working, but just from Italy or working from Paris. And it sounds crazy, but this is why these goals are so important. Mm-hmm. Our why is we want to have emergency backup, and we want to be able to live this life that we've designed for ourselves, right, that includes travel. Travel is a big part of it. So
exactly. And even when we're traveling, we include budgeting in traveling. We say how much are going to be our expenses during that month, and I still pay bills bi-weekly and do exactly the same thing, even if we are living in another country for that full month. So it's really all about keeping in mind of what it is that you want to design for your life. The first episode we ever spoke about was how to redesign your life. And this is something that is part of it. Redesigning how you see your finances, redesigning what is important to you, what it is that you want to accomplish with your finances. It will give you a strong why to be able to achieve everything you want to achieve with your finances.
Now it's time for the actionable steps of this episode for you to implement this week. Step 1 is review and list all money in and out.
Step 2 is to evaluate and eliminate expenses.
Step 3 is allocate your money. The 80-20 rule, or for self-employed, is the 50-30-10-10 rule.
And finally, stay accountable.
So that's our episode that has been 15 years in the making, figuring things out for you. We're really excited for it. And make sure you leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever it is that you listen to this podcast. That helps us tremendously and helps other people find the podcast as well.
And don't forget to get your spreadsheet.
Yeah, make sure you look for that. That's in the description below if you're on YouTube, or in the show notes if you're listening to this on the podcast. And we'll see you next week.
I'll see you next week, guys.